Hey everybody, and welcome to part 7 of the show with no names, Let's Read of the Westing Game. Chapter 19, Odd Relatives. Thursday was a sunny day, a glorious day. The autumn air was crisp and clear. None of the heirs noticed. WPP crossed the tape at 44, 44 and a half, 46, $46 a share. Oh my! Don't sell until I give the word, Alice Turtle said. Baba. The dressmaker smiled at her new nickname and eased back into the chair, but not for long. WPP, 48 and a quarter. Oh my, oh my. Laura Baumbach bit her thumbnail to quick. If only her child was here, that child was here. The child was being examined by the school nurse, having been caught again with a radio plugged into her ear. Turtle blamed her misbehavior on a toothache. The only thing that soothes the horrendous pain is listening to music. You should see a dentist, the nurse said. I have an appointment next week, Turtle lied. Can I go home now? The pain is truly unbearable. No. The nurse packed the tooth with foul-tasting cotton and sent her back to class. So every half hour, Turtle had to ask permission to go to the laboratory in order to keep up with the latest stock market prices. Bladder infection, she explained. Crow polished Mrs. Wexler's silver teapot with a Westing disposable diaper for the third time. 2 more days, the day after next. It was too painful going back to that house, but Otis said she must, to collect her due. It was her penance to go back, not her due. Blessed is he who expects nothing. BOOM! Just warned to keep the doors locked, the delivery boy said, dumping a carton of Westing paper products on the kitchen floor. You know, Crow, pal, I think I figured out who the bomber is. Crow stiffened as she stared at her distorted reflection in the shining silver. Who? That's right, Otis Hamper said. James Shin Hu. He wanted to put the coffee shop out of business, right? And then he had to bomb his own restaurant so nobody would suspect him. And he catered the Wexler party. Nobody would notice that the caterer brought an extra box along with all the food, right? James Shin Hu was the bomber. Crow's hands trembled, her face blotched with hate. That beautiful, innocent angel reborn. Sandy said her face will be scarred for life. James Shin Hu, beware. Vengeance shall be mine. The judge rearranged her docket in order to have these last few days free. Leave it to Sam Westing to interfere with her work. Sandy turned to his next entry. It's an interesting one. Crow. Birth Erica Crow. Age 57. Mother died at childbirth, raised by father, deceased. Education 1 year of high school. Married at 16, divorced at 40. Ex-husband's name Windy Windclopple. Windclopple. Hospital records. Problems related with chronic alcoholism. Police record. 3 arrests for vagrancy. Gave up drinking when she took up religion. Started the Good Salvation Soup Kitchen on Skid Row. Works as a cleaning woman at Sunset Towers and lives in the maid's apartment on the 4th floor. Westing connection. Question mark? Yes, it is interesting, Judge Ford replied, but it hardly tells us what we want to know. You got a customer. Jake Wexler pointed at his spare rib at the black-clad figure standing at the restaurant door. Must be the bill collector, Hu said, frowning over his account book. Grace looked up, saw it was only the cleaning woman, and returned to the sports photographs she was sorting. A dozen or more superstars would be framed and hung on one wall of Who's on First. Come over and join us, Jake shouted. Limping to their table, Crow heard Mrs. Wexler click her tongue. Sinful woman, she'll go to hell with her pride and her covetousness. She'll take that foot butcher of a husband with her. And that one, the fat one, the glutton, the bomber, the mutilator of innocent children. Maybe she is a customer, Hu thought, recognizing the face clenched with righteous anger as that of a diner not being served fast enough. He rose and pulled out a chair for Crow. My mom will be serving a Chinese tea lunch shortly. Madame Hu placed a variety of dumplings on the table, giggled at Jake, and ran back to the kitchen. That tittering Madame Hu was a beautiful woman, and quite young. Grace, casting a suspicious eye on her husband, was suddenly seized by a surge of gnawing jealousy. Maybe it was just the fried dumpling. Madame Hu returned to pour the tea. Jake patted her hand. Good, Grace noticed. He's clutching at her stomach. About time she felt jealous. The podiatrist returned to smile to Crow. Nothing wrong with your appetite, I'm happy to see. Nothing wrong with my mouth, the cleaning woman replied, looking down at her plate. It's my feet that hurt. The corn you cut out didn't heal yet, and I got a callus in the sole of my left foot, and my ingrown toenails growing in again. Grace clasped a hand over her mouth and ran out of the restaurant. Mr. Hu headed for the kitchen. Your problem comes from years and years of wearing the wrong kind of shoes, Jake lectured. Crow wasn't listening. James Shin Hu, the bomber, was coming back. He had something in his hands. Here, Crow, try these. I invented them myself. Paper inner soles. They'll make you feel like you're floating on air. It's tough standing on your feet all day. Here, take them. Crow examined the two pads of spongy folded paper. How much? Nothing, just compliments of the house. Still suspicious, Crow slipped the innersoles into her shoes and tried walking. What a blessed relief. Otis Amber was wrong. Jameson, who was a charitable man, he couldn't be the bomber. Crow floated out of the restaurant without paying for her lunch. Oh no, not another victim, Sidel Pulaski cried, stuffing her notes under the mattress. The nurse wheeled Chris next to Angela's bed and explained that the boy was being tested for a new medicine. Are you all right? She asked, bending over the squirming patient. Chris was trying to remove a blank, sealed envelope from his bathrobe pocket. He knew his brother had a crush on Angela. He figured Theo must have sneaked upstairs in the wrong bathrobe to slip this letter under Angela's door, then remembered she was in the hospital and was too shy to give it to her in person. Look at that smile, Sidel exclaimed. From Theo, he said. Chris hoped to watch Angela read the love letter, but the nurse insisted that he return to his room. Bye-bye. Good luck, Sidel called. Angela waved a bandaged hand. Dead, Chris replied. From Turtle. Serves her right for kicking his partner. Mountain, Angela thought. Turtle's MT stood for mountain, not empty. And the letter was not from Theo. Your love has two. Here are two for you. Now take her away from this sin and hate. Now, before it's too late. Again, two clues were taped to the bottom. With majesties. Crow and Otis Amber's clues are not king and queen, she told Sidel. They are with thy beautiful majesties. Sandy and the judge were still at work with the heirs. Wexler, Jake Wexler, age 45, podiatrist, graduated from Marquette, married 22 years, has 2 daughters. See below. Grace Windsor Wexler, born Gracie Winclopple, age 42, married to above, claims to be an interior decorator, spends most of her time at the Chinese restaurant or the beauty parlor. She and Jake, see above, have 2 daughters, see below. Angela Wexler, age 20, engaged to marry D. Denton Deere, also an heir, 1-year college, high grades, victim of 3rd bombing, embroiders a lot. Turtle Wexler, real name, Tabitha Ruth Wexler, age 13, junior high school student, plays the stock market, smart kid but kicks people. Flora Bomback calls her Alice. Westing connection. Grace Windsor Wexler claims that Sam Westing is her uncle. Angela looks like Viola Wexling, and so does Grace in a way, except that she's older. Yeah, and meaner. Sandy fidgeted with his pen. There's something I didn't write down. Maybe I shouldn't tell you, being a judge and all, but Jake Wexler is a bookie. No, he should not have told her that. A small-time operator, I'm sure, Mr. McSuthers. The judge replied coldly. It can have no bearing on the matter before us. Sam Westing manipulated people, cheated workers, bribed officials, stole ideas, but Sam Westing never smoked or drank or placed a bet. Give me a bookie any day over such a fine, upstanding, clean-living man. The doorman's face reddened. He pulled the detonative flask from his hip pocket and drowned several swigs. She'd been too harsh. Would you like me to fix you a drink, Mr. McSuthers? No thanks, Judge. I prefer my good old scotch. Windclopple! The judge's outburst was so unexpected, Sandy had a hard time keeping down that last swig. Grace Wexler's maiden name is not Windsor. It's Windclopple, the judge exclaimed, ruffling through the pages of Sandy's notebook. Here it is. Bertha Erica Crow. Ex-husband's name, Windy Windclopple. Sandy stopped coughing and started laughing. Grace Windsor Wexler is related to someone, all right. She's related to the cleaning woman. Think she knows, Judge? I doubt it. Besides, you can't be certain of the relationship. I like to see the documents in Crow's folder again. I'm sure it's Windclopple, Judge. I checked all my spellings 3 times over. Judge Ford reread the private investigator's reports. Mr. McSuthers, it is Windclopple, but look carefully at the name of the woman at the bottom of the interview. Bertha Erica Crow? Sure, I knew her. She and her pa lived in the upstairs flat. We were best friends, almost like sisters, but she was the pretty one with a beautiful complexion and long gold red hair. She left school to marry a guy named Windclopple. Haven't seen or heard from her since. She's not in any trouble, is she? Transcript of a taped interview with Sybil Pulaski, November 12th. Pulaski, the doorman said. Not just Pulaski, the judge pointed out. Sybil Pulaski. Sam Westing wanted Crow's childhood friend, Sybil Pulaski, to be one of the heirs. And he got Sidel Pulaski instead. Gee, Judge, you never noticed that. Boy, am I dumb. But what does it mean? It means, Mr. McSuthers, that Sam Westing has made his first mistake. All right, we know who the mistake is, Sidel Pulaski. And here's the funny thing. Sybil is actually a real name. Sidel is not. So, it's funny. And that's that Sybil Pulaski. She got cheated out of $200 million. Wow. Ah, man. Chapter 20. Confessions. Friday came quickly to the Westingairs. Too quickly. Time was running out. Turtle skipped school. She was in trouble enough, but she could build her own school and hire her own kind of teachers once she became a millionaire. In spite of having Turtle at her side, Flora Bomback still stared at the ever-changing, endless tape from the edge of the chair, chewed out what remained of her fingernails, and uttered an "oh my" each time WPP went by. At 2 o'clock, Westing Paper Products sold at $52 a share, its highest price in 15 years. Now, Baba, sell! Doug, who had a legitimate excuse from classes. Tomorrow was a big track meet. He jogged, he sprinted, he ran at full speed, not on the track, but on the trail of Otis Amber. Back and forth from the shopping center to Sunset Towers again and again and again, and hey, this is a new direction. Otis Amber parked his delivery bike in front of a rooming house and went inside. Doug waited, hidden in a doorway across the street, and waited. People came and went, but no Otis Amber. Doug jogged up and down the block for 2 hours. Still no sign of Otis Amber. Doug was cold and hungry, but at least his feet didn't hurt anymore. Last night when he asked Doc Wexler about the blisters, the podiatrist told him to see his father. His father of all people. But those paper insoles really worked. I must say, paper insoles do seem to make more sense than paper disposable diapers. I still don't get that. At 5 o'clock, Otis Amber skipped out of the rooming house, hopped on his bicycle, and returned to Sunset Towers empty-handed. Doug's assignment was over. Well, almost over. Where was Theo? Theo was being patched up in the hospital emergency room after a slight miscalculation in his solution experiment. Fortunately, no one else was around when the lab exploded. You like playing with explosives, kid? The bomb squad detective asked. Accidents in high school chemistry were not unusual, but this student lived in Sunset Towers. I was experimenting on chemical fertilizers, Theo replied, wincing as the doctor probed his shoulder for a glass shard. The first bomb went off in your folks' coffee shop, right? Your mother and father work you pretty hard, don't they? They work harder than I do. Why all the questions? Your captain said Sunset Towers explosions were just fireworks. Sure they were, but bombers have a funny habit of going for bigger and bigger bangs. Until they get caught. Theo had an alibi. He was nowhere near the Wexler apartment the day the third bomb went off. The detective grunted a warning about careless chemistry, but Theo had already learned his lesson. Ouch. At last, the coffee shop owner himself delivered up the order. The judge came right to the point. Mr. Theodorakis, tell me about your relationship with Violet Westing. I have a reason to believe he is in danger, or I would not ask. I have a reason to believe a life is in danger, I would not ask. It was a question he had expected. I grew up in Westing Town where my father was a factory foreman. Violet Westing and I were what you call childhood sweethearts. We planned to get married someday, when I could afford it, but her mother broke us up. She wanted Violet to marry somebody important. The judge had her interrupt. Her mother? Are you saying it was Mrs. Westing who arranged the marriage, not Sam Westing? George Theodorakis nodded. That's right. Sam Westing tried to involve Violet in his business. I guess he'd hoped that she'd take over the paper company one day, but she had her heart set on being a teacher. Besides, Violet Westing didn't have much of a business sense. After that, her father never paid her much attention. Go on. The judge held the witness in her stare. The subject was becoming painful, and Mr. Theodorakis faltered several times in the telling. Mrs. Westing handpicked that politician. Probably figured the guy would end up in the White House and her father would be the First Lady. But Violet thought he was nothing but a cheap political hack, a cheap crook. Violet was a gentle person, an only child. She couldn't turn against her mother. She couldn't face marrying that guy. I guess she couldn't find any way out except... Mrs. Westing sort of went off her rocker after Violet's death, and well, it was a long time ago. Thank you, Mr. Theodorakis, the judge said, ending the interrogation. That man had a different life now. Different loves, different problems. Thank you. You have been a great help. Sandy was now able to complete the entry. Theodorakis. Theo Theodorakis. Age, 17. High school senior. Works in family coffee shop. Wants to be a writer. Seems lonely. Can't find anybody to play chess with him. Christos Theodorakis. Age, 15. Younger brother of above. Confined to wheelchair. Disease struck about 4 years ago. Knows a lot about birds. Westing connection. Father was a childhood sweetheart of Sam Westing's daughter, who looks like Angela Wexler. Mrs. Westing broke up the affair. She wanted a daughter who could marry somebody else, but wanted the daughter to marry somebody else, but Violet Westing killed herself before the wedding. Neither of the parents are heirs. I hear the new medicine they're trying on Chris is doing some good, Sandy reported, but the poor kid still needs more help than the medicine. He's really smart, you know. Chris could have a real future, be a scientist or professor even, but it will take a pile of money, more money than his folks could ever make, to put him through college with a handicap like that. Their parents interest me more, the judge said. Why aren't they heirs? Sandy had some thought on that, too. Maybe Sam Westing didn't want to embarrass George Theodorakis, him being married and all. Or maybe Westing figured he'd be too busy with his coffee shop to stay in the game. Or maybe Westing blamed him for his daughter's death, figuring that they would have eloped. No, if Sam Westing blamed Mr. Theodorakis, he would have put him and made him an heir in this miserable game, the judge replied. There are too many maybes here, which is what Sam Westing had planned. We must not allow ourselves to be distracted from the real issue. Which heir does Sam Westing want punished? The person who hurt him the most? Sandy guessed. And who would that be? The person who caused his daughter's death? Exactly, Mr. McSuthers. Sam Westing plotted against this person he held responsible for his daughter's suicide. The person who forced Violet Westing to marry a man that she loathed. Mrs. Westing? That's not possible, Judge. Mrs. Westing is not one of the heirs. I think she is, Mr. McSuthers. The former wife of Sam Westing has to be one of the heirs. Mrs. Westing is the answer, and whoever she is, she's the one we have to protect. Alright, we're finally starting to get some answers. Uh-oh. Chapter 21. The Fourth Bomb. The door to apartment 2C opened. Flora Bombeck screamed, and Turtle flung herself on the pile of money that she had been counting. It was Theo, not the thief. Can I borrow your bike for a few hours? It's very important. Theo was not a runner like Doug, who was fuming about his being so late. He needed the bicycle to follow Otis Amber right now. Turtle stared at him in stony silence. I didn't make that sign in the elevator. Besides, you already kicked me for it. Please, Turtle. She still wouldn't answer, that kid. I had a long talk with the police today, but I still refused to tell them who the bomber was. What is that supposed to mean? What does she think it means? It means that he and everybody else knows that Turtle is the bomber. Okay, it makes sense that they would think that Turtle's the bomber. Never mind. Can I have your bike or not? Why do you want it? Theo ground his teeth. Take it easy. Anger won't help any more than the blackmail did. Try being a good guy. I saw Angela in the hospital today. She sends her regards. What is that supposed to mean? You let me have that bike, Turtle Wexler, or else. Turtle did not have to ask what the or else meant. The police, Bomber, Angela, but how did Theo find out? Here. She threw the padlock key across the room and waited for him to rush out before she let go of the money. He's such a nice boy, Flora Bombeck remarked. Sure, Turtle replied, the telephone number of the hospital typing. Angela Wexler, room 325. Room 325 is not accepting any calls. Turtle hung up the phone. If Theo knew, others knew. Angela had set off those fireworks wanting to get caught, but it was different now. Now she was confused. Now she was just plain scared. They could force a confession out of her in no time. The guilt was right there, staring out of those big blue eyes. Maybe they're questioning her now. Baba, I'm not feeling so good. I think I'll go home to bed. Weaving through rush hour traffic on Turtle's bike, Theo trailed the bus to a steamy downtown district across the railroad tracks where Crow and Otis got off, Skid Row. The pair wandered through the dimly littered and stinking street, bending over grimy bums asleep in doorways, raising them to their unsteady feet, and leading the ragtag procession into a decaying storefront. Paint was peeling off the letters of the window. Good Salvation Soup Kitchen. A drunken wreck of a man lurched into Theo, who put a quarter into the filthy outstretched hand, more out of fright than charity. Snatches of hymn singing drifted toward him as the last of these stragglers staggered through the door. Theo crossed the narrow street and pressed his nose against the steamy soup kitchen window. Rows of wretched souls sat on the wooden benches. Crow stood before them in her neat black dress, her hands raised towards the crumbling ceiling. Behind her, Otis Amber stirred a boiling mess in a big iron pot. Theo pedaled back to Sunset Towers at a furious pace. Whoever brought Crow and Otis Amber to these lower depths was none of his business. Whatever brought Crow and Amber to these lower depths was none of his business. He hated himself for spying. He hated Sam Westing and this dirty money and this dirty game. Theo felt as dirty as the derelicts he spied on. Dirtier. The judge thought that they were finished with the heirs. Not quite, the doorman said. McSuthers, Alexander McSuthers, called Sandy, age 65, born Edinburgh, Scotland, immigrated to Wisconsin at age 3, education, 8th grade, jobs, mill worker, union organizer, prize fighter, doorman, married, 6 children, 2 grandchildren. Westing connection, worked in Westing paper plant for 20 years, fired by Sam Westing himself for trying to reorganize the workers. No pension. Sandy turned to a blank page, pushed his tape glasses up the broken bridge of his nose, and looked at the judge. Name? It did not seem sporting to investigate one's own partner, but McSuthers was right. This was the Westing game. Of course, she had kept some facts from him about the other heirs, but only because he did not trust this gossip. Josie Joe Ford, with a hyphen between Josie and Joe. Age? 42. Education, Columbia, law degree, Harvard. The judge waited for the doorman to enter the information in his slow, cramped lettering. He had to be meticulous in order to prove he was better than his 8th grade education. It's a pity he had not gone further. He was a clever man. Jobs: assistant district attorney, judge, family court, state supreme court, appellate division. Appellate has 2 P's and 2 L's. Never married, no children. Westing connection? The judge paused, then spoke so rapidly Sandy had to stop taking notes. My mother was a servant in the Westing household. My father worked for the railroad, and he was the gardener on his days off. You mean you lived in the Westing house? Sandy asked with obvious surprise. You knew the Westings? I barely saw Mrs. Westing. Violet was a few years younger than I, doll-like and delicate. She was not allowed to play with the other children, especially the skinny, long-legged black daughter of the servants. Gee, you must have been lonely, Judge, having nobody to play with. I played with Sam Westing. Chess. Hour after hour, I sat staring down at that chessboard. He lectured me, he insulted me, and he won every game. The judge thought of their last game. She'd been so excited about taking his queen, only to have the master checkmate her on the next move. Sam Westing had deliberately sacrificed his queen, and she had fallen for it. Stupid child, you can't have a brain like that in that frizzy head to make a move like that. And those were the last words he ever said to her. The judge continued. I was sent to boarding school when I was 12. My parents visited me at school when they could, but I never set foot in the Westing house again, not until 2 weeks ago. Folks must have worked really hard, Sandy said. An education like that costs a fortune. Sam Westing paid for my education. He saw that I was accepted to the best schools, probably arranged for my first job, and perhaps more. I don't know. That must be the first decent thing I've heard about that guy. Hardly decent, Mr. McSuthers. It was to Sam Westing's advantage to have a judge in his debt. Needless to say, I've excused myself from every case even remotely connected with the Westing affairs. You're awfully hard on yourself, Judge, and on him. Maybe Westing paid for your education because you were smart and needy, and you did all the rest by yourself. This is getting us nowhere, Mr. McSuthers. Just right, Westing connection. Education financed by Sam Westing. Debt never repaid. Theo, upset over his Skid Row snooping, took out his anger on the up button, poking it, jabbing it, until the elevator finally made its way down to the lobby. Slowly, the door slid open. He stared down at the sparkling, sputtering arsenal, yelled, and belly flopped onto the carpet as rockets whizzed out from the elevator, inches above his head. Boom! Boom! A lightning flash of white fire streaked through the lobby, through the open entrance door, and burst into a chrysanthemum of color in the night sky. Then the elevator door closed. The bomber had made one mistake. The last rocket blasted off when the elevator returned to the 3rd floor. Boom! By the time the bomb squad reached the scene, by the way of the stairs, the smoke had cleared, but the young girl was still huddled on the hallway floor, tears streaming down her turtle-like face. For heaven's sake, say something, her mother said. Tell me where it hurts. The pain was too great to be put into words. 5 inches of turtle's braid had been badly singed. Grace Wexler attacked the policeman. Nothing but a childless prank, you said. Some childless prank. Both my children are cruelly injured, almost killed. Maybe now you'll do something, now that it's too late. Unshaken by the mother's anger, the policeman held up the sign that had been taped to the elevator wall. The bomber strikes again! On the reverse side was a handwritten composition. How I Spent My Summer Vacation by Turtle Wexler. Grace grabbed the theme and shook it at her daughter, who was being rocked in Flora Baumbach's arms. Somebody stole this from you, didn't they, Turtle? You couldn't have done such an awful thing. Not to Angela, not to your own sister. Could you, Turtle? Could you? I want to see a lawyer, Turtle replied. Uh-oh. Oh, man, what's Grace gonna do now? What, is she gonna, try to kill Turtle? Wow. The bomb squad, faced with 6 hours overtime filling out forms and delivering the delinquent to a juvenile detention facility, decided it was for the best for all concerned to escort the prisoner to apartment 4D and place her in the custody of Judge Ford. Judge Ford put on her black robe and seated herself behind the desk. Before her stood a downcast child looking very sad and very sorry, not at all like the turtle that she knew. You surprised me, Turtle Wexler. I thought you were too smart to commit such a dangerous, destructive, and stupid act. Yes, ma'am. Why did you do it, Turtle? To hurt someone? To get even with someone? No, ma'am. Of course not. Turtle kicked shins, but she was not the type to bottle up her anger. You do understand that a child would not receive such a harsh penalty as an adult would, right? That there will be no permanent criminal record? Yes, ma'am. No, ma'am. She was protecting someone. She had set off the fireworks in the elevator to divert suspicion from the real bomber. But who was the real bomber? Nothing to do but drag it out of her, name by name, and might as well start out with the least likely. Are you protecting Angela? No! The judge was astounded by the response. Angela couldn't be the bomber, not that sweet, pretty thing. Thing? Is that how she regarded the young woman? As a thing? And what had she ever said to her except, I hear you're getting married, Angela, or how pretty you look, Angela? Had anyone asked her about her ideas, her hopes, her plans? If I had been treated like that, I'd use dynamite, not fireworks. No, I would have just walked on and kept things going. But Angela was different. What a senseless thing to do, the judge said aloud. Yes, ma'am. Turtle stared down at the carpet, wondering if she had given Angela away. No, duh, you gave Angela away. It wasn't Angela? No! 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 Subtlety is not Turtle's strong point. Judge Ford rose and placed an arm around Turtle's bony shoulders. She had never wished for her sister until this moment. Turtle, will you give me your word that you will never play with fireworks again? Yes, ma'am. And while we're at it, do you have anything else to confess? Yes, ma'am. I was in the Westing house the night Mr. Westing died. Good Lord, child, sit down and tell me. Turtle began with a Purple Wave story, went on to the whisperings, the bedded down corpse, the dropped peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, her mother's cross, and ended with the $24 she had won. Did either you or Jug Clue call the police? No, ma'am, we were just so scared and we ran. Is that a crime? The judge said it was a criminal offense to conceal a murder. But Mr. Westing didn't even look murdered, Turtle argued. He looked asleep, like in the coffin. He looked like a wax dummy. A wax dummy? Now Turtle was the one to be surprised by the excited response. The judge thinks that it might have been a real wax dummy, and not a corpse at all. Then what happened to Sam Westing? The judge regained her composure. Not reporting a dead body is a violation of the health code, but I wouldn't worry about that. Is there anything else, Turtle? Yes, ma'am, Turtle replied, glancing at the portable bar. Can I have a little bourbon? What? Just a little. And a piece of cotton to put on my cavity. My tooth hurts something awful. Relieved to not have a juvenile alcoholic on her hands, Judge Ford prepared some home remedy. Is that better? Good, you may go home now. Home meant going to Baba. Baba loved her no matter what, and Turtle didn't care if the others thought that she was the bomber. Except for Sandy. He was walking towards her right now, walking his bouncy walk, but not smiling. Sandy was disappointed in her. He thinks she hurt her own sister. He doesn't want to be friends anymore. How's my girl? Sandy said, cupping his hand under his chin and lifting her head. You, hitting the bottle again? It's just bourbon on cotton for my toothache. Yeah, I've heard that one before. Oh, honey. Turtle was pointing at the inside of her mouth. Doorman peered in. Wow, that's some cavity. It looks like the Grand Canyon. Tomorrow morning, you're going to see my dentist. No back talk. He's very gentle and you won't feel a thing. Promise you'll go? Turtle nodded. Sandy smiled. Good. Then now into business. My wife is having a birthday tomorrow. I thought one of your gorgeous striped candles would make a great present. I only have one left. Turtle replied, it's the best of the lot. 6 colors. I spent a lot of time making it. That's why I wouldn't part with it. But if it's for your wife's birthday, I'll let you have it for only $5. And I won't charge you sales tax. Try not to stick your fanny out so far, Angela said from her chair. Now that Sidople Lassie depended on crutches, she lurched clumsily, hobbled by old habits. Just keep reading those clues, the secretary straightened, shoulders back, stomach in, until our next step. With their telephones switched off and contagious disease added to the no visitors sign, a bomb victims had privacy at last. Now Angela, her hands unbandaged, was reshuffling the collected clues. Grains, spacious, grace, hood, good, hood, with beautiful majesties from thy purple waves on, or no, mountain. Again, Siddell ordered, change them around and read either on or no. Both of them together are confusing. Good spacious grains with grace on thy purple mountain hood waves from majesty's beautiful. Shh! Someone was at the door. Angela picked up the note that was slipped underneath. My darling Angela, I guess the sign on the door means that I should stay away too. I understand. We both need time to think things over. I'll wait. I love you. Denton. What does it say? What does it say? Stella pressed, but Angela only read the postscript. P.S. You have another admirer. Chris wants to give you and Mrs. Pulaski one of our clues. Flora Bombeck has seen it too. The word is plain. Like an airplane? Said I'll ask. No, plain. Like ordinary. Like the wide open plain. Plains, grains. Quick, Angela. Read the clues again. Good hood from spacious plain, grains on with beautiful waves, grace thy purple mountain majesties. That's it, Angela. We got it. We got it. Stella could barely control her excitement. The will said, sing in praise of this generous land. The will said, may God thy gold refine. America, Angela, America. Purple mountain majesties, Angela. We did it. Fortunately, Stella Pulaski was close to the bag when she threw her crutches into the air. I don't remember if I figured out the America the Beautiful thing the first time I read it, but I'm guessing it's likely that you figured it out, whoever you are. Alright, wow, we finally know what the clues are adding up to. But it's not what you have, it's what you don't have that counts. I guess we'll figure out what that means later. See you next time for the Show with No Names Let's Read of the Westing Game.